The password is Big Blue Wrecking Crew. Hello, my name is Will, and you're listening to Exploding Helicopter, the podcast that likes to see its death blows delivered to helicopters. Now, the term cinematic universe has become all the rage in recent years. This rather highfalutin concept is used by movie makers and nerdy film buffs to bundle together films and characters as a single coherent body of work. But long before Marvel's Avengers assembled, or the Fast teamed up with the Furious, the makers of the American Ninja series were boldly expanding the cosmos of their stealth assassin franchise. After Michael Dudikoff, the star of American Ninja 1 and 2, declined to appear in a third outing, the series continued with a martial artist and actor David Bradley cast as the new lead. But when Mikey Dudd said he'd be up for donning his karate pajamas one more time, producers decided to cross the streams and unite the two American ninjas in a single film. So on this show, we're reviewing that historic moment when worlds and bokken sticks collide by looking at American Ninja 4, The Annihilation. Given that we're talking of momentous cinematic team-ups, my guest today is a writer, producer and action movie aficionado. He's just published a book, Born to be Bad, all about the greatest villains in action cinema. Welcome to the show, Ti Singh. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Will.
And I'm glad that you are able to join me on this show because, you've just published this book, which is all about looking at the villains in action movie cinema. And I think we've got a couple, if not three, sort of villains in this movie that are quite interesting to look at.
Oh, the villains in this film. I definitely want to talk about the villains in this film. It's incredible. Should we just dive in? I think you have at least 4.
Yeah, actually, now you're talking about it, there's probably 4 villains in this movie. I mean, there's a real plethora of them.
And it's amazing who they decided to cast as villains to kind of go up against, let's just say, quite active martial artists. I mean, I felt the finale of this film essentially has David Bradley beating up a man in his late 60s.
Well, that's in the finest traditions of many action movies. But let's save the kind of the finer details of American Ninja 4 for our main discussion. But as I've already mentioned, you're interested in villains, it seems, rather than heroes. So I wondered kind of like what drew you to this darker world.
Sure. I've often found, growing up with these kind of films and the 80s action films in general, is that when most of your budget is going towards Arnie or Stallone or Willis or whoever it might be, that means the producers and the directors often don't have that much more to go towards their bad guy, and that gives them the opportunity to take risks. And in some films, it pays off in spades. So in Die Hard, Alan Rickman, that was his first feature film. He was just a well-established stage actor. They basically brought him on board, gave him carte blanche, and he created one of the most memorable villains of all time. Comparatively, in 80s films, the bad guys are often made up of well-respected British thespians, big bodybuilders or powerlifters to represent a physical threat to your action heroes, or just a mixture of martial artists, as though that kind of style came into action films. So whereas the heroes are generally quite cut and dry, you know what you're getting, I feel in action films there's just a whole wide range of bad guys and different types of bad guys, from the big burly henchman to the mustache twirling big boss at the top. So that's kind of why I wanted to write the book and to set out to interview all the actors that played all those different types of bad guys.
Well, you've mentioned some of the types of villains that you meet in these movies. So I wondered if you could sort of pick out some that are your favourites.
Growing up, I was watching action films like Beverly Hills Cop and things like that. And then there were actors like Ronnie Cox, who I grew up thinking were playing straight-laced police lieutenants like he does in Beverly Hills Cop, and, musicians like in Deliverance, and he also plays the President of the United States in the canon film Captain America. And then I think the first time I saw RoboCop, I was like, hang on, this guy is normally playing upstanding police officers or military officers. How is he suddenly being cast as a bad guy? And in RoboCop and Total Recall, Ronnie Cox looks like he's having an absolute ball. He is chewing up the scenery with absolute delight. So he was at the top of my list when I was trying to track down these actors to talk to, and he did not disappoint. He's actually a folk musician these days.
Really?
When I spoke to him, he had just got back from touring Ireland with his band. He basically just goes on the road singing. And
wow.
Music is actually his passion. I know he's currently touring in the States. It's amazing. So many of these actors, you have no idea what they're up to now. And some of them weren't even actors. So bringing it back to Die Hard, Alexander Godunov, who plays Carl, he's tragically dead now. But I spoke to Andreas Winooski, who played Tony, his brother in the film, who's the first terrorist that Bruce Willis kills. Both of them were trained ballet dancers. So they're not exactly who you think of when casting, terrorists in action films. I was asking the questions that everyone wanted to know, such as, how big are your feet? Because Die Hard has disparaged the size of his feet for over 30 years. So that was actually the first question I asked. I was like, come on, let's get to the bottom of this now. How big are your feet?
And can you reveal for Exploding Helicopter listeners how big his feet really are? Are they bigger than Bruce Willis's grandma?
I think it's Bruce Willis's sister. Bruce Willis's sister must have ungodly sized feet for a woman.
We'll leave it at that. But clearly you're somebody who is immersed in the world of action cinema. I wanted to ask you as a guest here, what you think of exploding helicopters in movies. I mean, have you even thought about them before?
I have. And let me tell you about what I feel is, when it comes to exploding helicopters, the scene that sticks in my mind, it's Predator.
Oh, yeah.
Because if Arnie didn't explode that helicopter, they could have all just flown out of there. But the whole thing about Predator is they have to get through the jungle because the canopy's too thick for them to kind of get a rescue team in there to pick them up. But when they're doing the raid on that camp, two of the rebels try and take off in the helicopter, and Arnie, instead of just shooting them or taking them out the helicopter, proceeds to just blow it up with his grenade launcher, and therefore just removing their one chance of escape. And every time I watch Predator, it's like, why are you using the grenade launcher on two pilots? Just shoot them, or your Arnie, rip off the door and punch them both, or whatever. It's a gratuitous use of an exploding helicopter, but it's one that sticks in my mind. However, like you said, as an aficionado of action films and general genre films, I think there's pretty much 1 film in 5 I watch probably has an exploding helicopter in.
What a life you must lead if 20% of the films you watch have exploding helicopters in.
The thing is, it's an unfortunate professional issue. So I also run something called the Bristol Bad Film Club, where once a month we show a genre or cult film that is generally so bad it's great, and we donate all the money from our screenings to a different charity. And it's amazing how many films make use out of model helicopters to blow up. One of our favorite filmmakers is Andy Sidaris.
Oh, yeah.
Who created the Babes, Bombs and Bullets franchise, which is basically hire a bunch of Playboy bunnies, put them in tight-fitting outfits, give them guns, and get them to shoot things and jiggle a bit. And so one of his films, Hard Ticket to Hawaii, just features Playboy bunnies with rocket launchers. There is, I think, at least one helicopter is taken out in that film, as well as a giant cancer-giving toxic snake that is also blown up with a rocket launcher. That film is insane.
That's right. And also, alongside the helicopter and the snake, sadly, a inflatable sex doll also gets taken out by a rocket launcher in that movie. So it's
That's correct, yeah.
The body count in that film is just brutal. Okay, I think it's time to get stuck into American Ninja 4. So let's listen to its truly great trailer.
We only have a few days before the media gets a hold of this. Then all hell will break loose.
Michael Dudikoff, David Bradley, together for the first time. American Ninja 4, The Annihilation. When the enemy is ruthless,
This is not a game. Those were ninja.
merciless,
Cut the slime down like dogs, you understand?
and holds the world hostage.
It has enough power to blow New York off the face of the earth.
It takes more than courage.
I got a bad feeling about this, Sean.
You need the power of an American ninja.
If you can get us to the Dragon Fort, you may have a chance.
Twice the speed. Twice the skill. 4 times as deadly. Michael Dudikoff, David Bradley. American Ninja 4, The Annihilation.
American Ninja 4, The Annihilation, came out in 1990. A renegade British army officer and a militant Muslim sheikh plan to blow up New York with a nuclear bomb. While they engineer their scheme, the unlikely duo, who have as much in common as Larry David and Osama bin Laden, hide out in a secret base in Africa, surrounded by an army of highly trained ninjas, as you do. Desperate to stop radioactive Armageddon, the US government sends in a team of special forces. They're promptly captured, so Uncle Sam sends in another team, this time led by David Bradley. But when he too is captured, the military top brass have no alternative but to send for Michael Dudikoff. Alongside Michael Dudikoff and David Bradley, we have British character actor James Booth, who is perhaps best known for playing Private Hook in Zulu. Curiously, Booth also penned the script for this film, which, if you're familiar with his career, is very peculiar. The film was directed by Cedric Sundstrom, who helmed American Ninja 3 Blood Hunt. It has a 28% rating on Rotten Tomatoes and a score of just 3.8% on IMDb. So with all that out the way, what did you make of American Ninja 4, Ti?
Well, I'm actually a big fan of the American Ninja franchise, and I actually own the box set. So when you asked me to talk about this film, I was very happy, as it gave me a chance to go back and revisit the franchise. But I have to say, of all the American Ninja films, this is probably my least favorite.
Oh, really?
And I know that the teaming up of Michael Dudikoff and David Bradley should be something akin to Batman and Superman teaming up, but, you know, in the canon films universe. But I have one overriding problem with this film, and that is there is no Steve James. And Steve James plays Jackson in the franchise, arguably a much better martial artist than both Dudikoff and Bradley. I might be upsetting a few people with that comment, but that man is pure, unadulterated charisma.
Yeah.
And in the first 2 films, it's his chemistry with Jackson and Joe that sell the film. And when Michael Dudikoff doesn't return for the 3rd film, he's put up against David Bradley. And again, he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting because, with all due respect to Dudikoff and David Bradley, they're not the most charismatic actors. So Steve James is always the most interesting thing to watch on screen. And he just brings the laughs with his kind of, ninjas exasperation. As a man who has had to gone through this 3 times. So the problem is, when you've got Michael Dudikoff and David Bradley acting against each other, and there's no one of Steve Level's charm there for them to bounce off, it's really stilted and really horrible to watch. And I don't know who Carl Braxton is, David Bradley's friend who he's best man for at the wedding. But all I could keep thinking was, where's Steve James? Where's Jackson? This film needs more Jackson. And that is probably why it would fall to the bottom of the list for me in terms of the American Ninja films.
Well, it is a very good point you make about your Steve James being missing from this movie, and I don't quite know why he is absent from this particular entry in the series, because, you know, as you mentioned, you know, there is essentially a kind of Steve James surrogate in this Carl character who is in this movie. So it's not as if there wasn't sort of structurally within the script a role for him to play. I mean, there clearly was, but I think I am a bit warmer on this film than you, because it is in many ways. Even I have to confess that this is the weakest film in the series. I mean, it is not a good film. However, I do find it a wildly entertaining film. And, if you have watched canon movies, from the 80s, there is a certain sort of wackiness to those films. And this one is about as wacky as they come. But the goofiness is completely unironic. And I kind of think that you have to be very cold-hearted if that doesn't win you over, because you're just watching a film where people are just trying to make an entertaining movie. And, despite all of the obvious problems, I actually really do quite like American Ninja 4.
I was laughing a lot through this film for several reasons, which we'll get into, but I do have a theory about why Steve James might not be in this film. And it is simply a theory of mine that I thought of while I was watching it, and I have no idea if it's based in any sort of reality. But my theory is this film was made in 1990 and it was clearly filmed in South Africa.
Yes.
So the apartheid government's still in effect. And I think Steve James was just like, no, I'm not going. That's my theory. And Dwayne Alexander, who plays Carl Braxton, was drafted in as the expert marksman who cannot hit three ninjas standing right in front of him. That's my theory about why Steve James isn't in the film. I don't know if it's true.
You could well imagine, given the politics of that particular time, and I'm old enough to remember the apartheid era and the kind of the boycotts that existed around the world against South Africa at that time. Yeah, it wouldn't be at all surprising if that was the reason that Steve James decided, assuming that he was even offered. It wouldn't be surprising at all if that was the reason that he wasn't involved in this particular movie.
I'd be very surprised if they didn't ask him to come back. However, it is a canon film. They are famously very cheap. And another part of it could be if they were bringing back Dudikoff and Bradley, that is where their budget went. And reading up about this film, it's very interesting that David Bradley apparently wanted him and Dudikoff's character to team up throughout the film. And Dudikoff allegedly wanted his character Joe to save the day. And as such, you have a film of two very distinct halves. David Bradley, Sean Davidson going in, trying to save the day, failing, and then just being captured. And then Joe having to come in, team up with a bunch of extras from Mad Max and and roll in and save the day. And because of that, it feels incredibly disjointed. I mean, you want your heroes to team up from the beginning, and if one of them's captured, the other one to save the day. Not here is your hero, he has failed, we're just going to have to draft in another hero that you might remember from 2 films ago. Although, to be fair, if you're a fan of the American Ninja films, you want Dudikoff to return.
Yeah, I mean, I think you make a very good point about the structure of this movie. It does feel very, very lumpy for exactly the reason that you say. The kind of the excitement, the anticipation of going in to watch this movie is to see the kind of the 2 stars of this franchise work together, but they don't ever really work together. And as you say, David Bradley really gets the rough end of the stick in this particular deal because he's the one who gets to be captured in the first half of the film, and again at the end of the film he then gets to beat up a 60-year-old pensioner whilst Dudikoff takes on the sort of the elite super ninja that is part of the villain's sort of army of henchmen. So yeah, Bradley does seem to get the real rough end of the stick on this film.
I'm wondering if it's a sort of Vin Diesel, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson situation. That the two of them just couldn't stand each other, and therefore they couldn't share a scene together apart from that really disjointed fight where it's a ninja wearing a mask of Sean, and they just have that fight scene. And even then, when I was watching it, I was like, that's not Michael Dudikoff. That is a stunt double right there. His face was in shadow. So part of me all the way through was, did these two not get on? Because they barely share a scene together. And if it unavoidable, then they're there in the same shot. Otherwise, they barely say a word to each other. They weren't even friends in the previous film. So now it just seems like that's tagged on for no real reason. But yeah, David Bradley really does kind of get shafted in this film, and he kills James Booth's character by essentially kicking him through a table, and then it appears James Booth dies of a heart attack. It's while Michael Dudikoff is fighting a cross between a ninja and an extra from Excalibur who works at medieval times. The Super Ninja.
Well, I've got a completely unsubstantiated theory of my own, which is that David Bradley is a martial artist in his own right. Whilst Michael Dudikoff, whilst he fronts obviously a martial arts franchise, he famously didn't know martial arts at all, and despite that he was recruited into the lead role in the American Ninja franchise. And so I wonder if Dudikoff was a little bit embarrassed because he doesn't want to be shown up with somebody who actually knows how to do a roundhouse kick.
It's an interesting theory, but he clearly didn't seem to have that issue with Steve James.
Well, the difference is that David Bradley obviously had become the American Ninja
That's true,
in
yeah.
the third film. So whilst Steve James was always in that buddy role, so maybe my idea is that Dudikoff felt a bit insecure that here's somebody actually this actual martial artist has come in, taken the lead role in the series, and here I am sort of now playing, I guess, catch up in the franchise that I created.
It would be fascinating to find out, but I don't think any of them would ever confirm or deny anything one way or another, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a fascinating film. And talking about the villains, if James Booth did write this, I have to question the scene where his character is just groping the character of Sarah. That is awful. I don't know what is going on there. It was horrible to watch. I mean, it's a canon film, so there's always some sort of titillation or nudity, but it wasn't even in there for that reason. It was awful. And like you said, I mean, James Booth is best known for playing Hook in Zulu, so I knew him for that. But watching him in this film, he was hamming it up to the nines. This film was insane. And don't even get me started on Ron Smirzak in Brownface as an Arab. I know that man, South African. I've seen him in Jackie Chan's Who Am I? You are not Arab, sir.
Well, let's look in a little bit more detail at the villains in this movie. And there's an awful lot of villains and henchmen in this particular movie. So we've got this Arab. I guess he's the sort of the money man behind
the money. Yeah,
he's the money behind this operation. We've got James Booth, who is this sort of disaffected British army officer who's now sort of hell bent on seemingly revenge against the world. He seems to be, I guess, the brains of the operation. You then have this super ninja character, and you also then have this sort of local police chief who the
lackey guy who looks like Joseph Goebbels.
Exactly, the sort of the kind of the villain's lickspittle who is just sort of there to do their bidding. And I mean, I think that adds to, frankly, the sort of you've got rather fuzzy goals and aims for these villains, and you've then just got, frankly, probably a few too many of them. I think, some combination of James Booth and or the Super Ninja would probably be enough for this movie.
Yeah, I agree. I think the scene that best kind of summed up Booth's character in that he doesn't know what he wants is where he goes into the cell with a bullwhip and goes up to the Delta Force guys and goes, "Lick my boot." And the soldier doesn't do anything. James Booth gets a bullwhip, hits him once, the guy still doesn't do anything, and then he just gets one of his guards to grab his head and just shove it on his boot to lick his boot. So the whole thing is, you haven't broken this guy in the slightest. You've just forced him to do what you want. He's still as defiant as ever. And you put about as much effort into breaking him. Well, you put no effort into breaking him whatsoever. You hit him once. So that entire just scene summed up for me kind of how bad and how lack of a plan his character actually had. And yeah, it was just downright terrible. But then just before that, you had a very touching scene where two of the Delta Force guys clasped hands and looked into each other's eyes. And I genuinely just wanted them to kiss and make out. I thought, check this out. This is a canon film. This is very progressive. We have two very butch but gay Delta Force guys here who are clearly in love with each other. And that love story went nowhere. That was disappointing.
Well, of the villains, it seems to be that James Booth is perhaps the most three-dimensional of this particular film, and probably is no coincidence that he also wrote the script, albeit under a pseudonym, and because he does seem to have all of the best lines in this particular movie. So there's a kind of a great line in this movie where kind of Michael Dudikoff had sort of stolen some secret plans dressed as a priest, and suddenly everyone realizes, oh my goodness, how can that have happened? Because James Booth just sort of says, are you mad? There are no bloody priests. I shot them all months ago. And none of the other villains in this film really get quite the look in that he gets, and you have to think that is largely down to the fact that he seemed to be in charge of writing the script of this movie.
He definitely dialed it up to 11. There's that bit where they hear Dudikoff in the tunnels, and he just goes, "What's that noise? They're in the tunnels! Damn it!" and just starts screaming. And I was like, "Oh, James, you are having an off day today. This is awful, but damn it, you're trying." Yeah, he's giving it all. I don't know why he ended up writing it. Did he just go, I fancy a free trip to South Africa, relive my Zulu days, because Zulu was filmed there? God knows what happened, but there were some interesting choices going on from him.
Well, he does, bizarrely, if you look at his CV, in the kind of mid to late 80s, he does actually sort of turn up writing quite a few scripts for canon movies, and it's such... if you look at his CV and you look at the writing stuff on there, and you just think, what was going on in his world, in his life, that, somebody who'd made a living basically in front of the camera, suddenly in the kind of mid-80s starts penning scripts for canon movies. It's so peculiar, but sadly he's somebody who he died good, I think 15-20 years ago, so we're sadly not going to get the answer to that question. But it is very peculiar, the career arc of James Booth.
I mean, it's after canon were throwing lots of money around. I mean, that really happened in like 86, 87 with Masters of the Universe and Superman 4. So maybe for him, canon was just a regular source of income.
Well, let's have a look at some of the action sequences in this movie. And, this film ends with one of the most surreal sequences I think I've seen in maybe any action movie, because there's been some pretty bizarre instances in the American Ninja series as a whole, and certainly there are some bizarre moments in the in American Ninja 4, but the kind of the finale of this film involves Michael Dudikoff recruiting what are, according to the script, a bunch of ex-prisoners who are now sort of living out of some sort of former quarry. But these ex-prisoners, they basically look like they're refugees from the Mad Max series. And so Dudikoff teams up with them, and, they kind of storm the ninjas base at the end of this movie. So this film sort of, takes a very bizarre sort of turn, almost into the realms of science fiction, with these, Mad Max extras kind of, turning up as a kind of impromptu army to work alongside Dudikoff.
They don't even look like people from this world. They look like they have just walked off a Mad Max film. And that's bizarre, because the whole Mad Max influence was over by 1990. Beyond Thunderdome had come and gone. Duran Duran's Wild Boys video was God knows how old by this. So it's so weird. I mean, canon weren't above ripping stuff off to make a quick buck. I mean, I grew up watching their version of King Solomon's Mines with Richard Chamberlain, and it's such a clear cash-in on Raiders of the Lost Ark. I was blatantly aware of that as a 7-year-old. But to suddenly kind of throw in a bit of a Mad Max influence in the American Ninja series is just bizarre. And the whole end series where they're smashing through the gate while Michael Dudikoff is taking so long to free the prisoners. He takes so long, one of them is burnt to death. When that was happening, I was like, come on, and now he's going to fire something and free their hands. But he's just there walking as slowly as possible down the stairs, and a man dies because he can't put a little bit of pace into what he's doing. It's the whole end scene is crazy. And then he fights the super ninja, kicks him into a bunch of crates that randomly explode. It was fantastic.
The only explanation I can think of for the sort of bizarre Mad Max influence, and I'd need to go back and look at the canon filmography, is maybe at the same time they just shot some sort of post-apocalyptic type movie, and they had the leftover set, they had the leftover costumes, and they just thought, hey, let's just sort of write it into American Ninja 4, and we can, in that classic sort of Roger Corman way of, reusing sets, reusing bits of film that you'd shot for another movie.
That would not surprise me, and that probably makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you're probably right.
Well, I think that is probably as good a place to wrap up our main discussion of American Ninja 4. Now, it wouldn't be the Exploding Helicopter podcast if we didn't talk about the exploding helicopter in this film. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute.
Jordan!
What?
I want to watch a movie.
I want to play some fucking tunes.
I want to watch a movie.
I want to play tunes.
Movie.
Music.
Movie.
Music.
Movie.
Music.
All right, fine. How about this? We will watch a movie, all right?
Okay.
Talk about that movie, and then we will listen to the soundtrack that went with that movie, and then talk about that as well.
Okay.
Does that sound good?
Yeah.
All right. So join us every episode on Screen Tracks. You can check us out on iTunes. Go to our site, screentracks.net. That's screen, SCREENTRAX.net. Join us for every episode. We hope you can join us, and we'll have a lot of fun, all right?
Yes, we will.
All right.
We're back, and now we're looking at the exploding helicopter action. Despite so many films demonstrating their dangers, helicopters remain a curiously popular getaway vehicle amongst villains. And we're given another illustration of that point here. So as his plan falls to pieces, the evil Sheikh attempts to abscond in a chopper. As battle rages across his fortress, one of the rebels shoulders an RPG and fires it at the whirlybird, striking its target. The doomed helicopter explodes in a fiery eruption. Ty, what did you make of the exploding helicopter action?
Well, I mean, I was surprised that the man who shoots down the helicopter was Carl, who has so far, not showcased the marksman abilities that we've been told so much. But here he is with a big grenade launcher, fires it straight into the helicopter. It explodes gloriously, and in what is clearly a model shot, you can see part of the fuselage just kind of hanging from a wire, still in midair before they cut away too quickly. I thought it beautifully defined canon filmmaking. It was cheap, to the point, and explosive.
Yeah, I think you describe it very well, because this really isn't the finest hour in the exploding helicopter mini genre. Yeah, as you say, it is it's a very cheap looking scene. There's a very massive close up of the model exploding. Presumably, that close up is there really to disguise the kind of the fact that this is not a real helicopter blowing up in any way. It's there to disguise the limitations of the special effects budget. Although after the kind of the frame filling explosion, we do get to see the sort of the wreckage spin round. It's very clear at that moment that this is a model helicopter on a bit of string, because no fuselage which has just been exploded would spin around in this particularly curious way unless it was a model that was dangling on a bit of string somewhere.
Yes, it was crazy. And like you said, it was up close. It was a tight shot, so you couldn't see the model before it exploded. I'm just trying to think, because the first American Ninja film, they blow up a helicopter as well, don't they?
They do indeed.
Yeah, I think it's just another one of those cases where as the sequels, they made more and more sequels, the budget just reduced and reduced because it's ridiculous.
Yeah, the one in the first American Ninja movie, Steve James takes it out with a rocket launcher, and
Steve James.
Yeah, Steve James. We go. We shouldn't do that to ourselves, Ty, because
I know.
we're just going to go off on another reverie about the great Steve James. But
the man was taken from this world too soon.
He was indeed, and he's got some. You know what? Because there isn't really that much to say about this particular exploding helicopter, if truth be told, because it's not really that interesting. So I'm gonna take a blatant little detour, and if you want to see Steve James working alongside Michael Dudikoff outside of the American Ninja films, then you should go and check out. Is it Avenging Force?
It's Avenging Force. Yeah, by Sam Furstenberg, who did the first American Ninja, and James Booth's in that as well.
Because it's kind of Hard Target, isn't it? It's kind of Hard Target before Hard Target.
Yeah, so it's definitely like The Most Dangerous Game, that Jim Carter man-hunting man. It has Steve James to make up for it. But like you said, James Booth is in that one as well, so it ties it all nicely together.
So I think probably our concluding point is if you like Dudikoff, if you like Steve James, then definitely go away and watch Avenging Force. You know what? I think it's time to wrap up this episode. Ty, would you like to take a moment to tell people where they can find your book and just generally keep track of what you're up to online?
Sure. So you can find me on Twitter at Ti Singh. It's Simon, but with a T, and then Singh, S-I-N-G-H. I'm also on Twitter as the Bristol Bad Film Club, which is the other BBFC. You can buy my book, Born to be Bad, talking to the greatest villains in action cinema, wherever you buy books from, most likely Amazon, or also from the publishers Bear Manor Media. And I'm currently producing an action film called In Search of the Last Action Heroes, which is about the rise and fall of the 80s action genre. I'm making that with YouTuber Oliver Harper, and you can back the project on Indiegogo. We just had a really successful campaign on Kickstarter, and we're just trying to get a little bit more money so we can do some more interviews, and then I'm off to LA in October to get the first of those done.
So yeah, Ty, thanks so much for joining me, and thanks for sharing your love and your passion for the American Ninja series.
Oh, thanks for having me, Will. If there's a Dudikoff film to talk about, I'll be there.
As always, don't forget to check out the Exploding Helicopter website, where we've got hundreds of reviews as well as facts and stats on helicopter explosions in film. If you like what we do, then make sure you tell your friends, your enemies, even random people you meet on the street. We'll be back soon, but until then, keep watching the skies for those exploding helicopters.
This podcast is a proud member of the Lamb Podcasting Network. Find the network at largeassmovieblogs.com.
What the hell is going on, Gavin? Carl is not a field operative.
You haven't read his file. I have. He came top of his class. A brilliant linguist, a superb marksman. He's the best trained operator we have.
He's also a fantastic bowler, but this is not a game, Gavin. Those were ninja.